that I was going to start making some videos for everybody. When I first started this process of researching traction and just going through the whole thing with scoliosis treatment, there was a lot of information out there, but it was mostly from healthcare professionals, and there's not a whole lot of like patient-directed feedback. So I decided that I would start making videos to talk about my experience as someone who's going through halo traction. And I think this is going to be like a dual purpose thing. It will help, hopefully, people who are considering this process themselves, and also maybe help out my family and close friends to understand what I'm going through while I'm here. If nobody but my family and friends sees this, that's fine. But I mean, if someone who's going to be going through or is going through this process gets to hear that they're not alone, that's my ultimate goal here too. So I'm going to start making videos, hopefully, and we'll see where this goes. So to start out with, my name is Grace. I am 22 years old. I have a condition called arthrogryposis. English, that means that it stiffens the joints of the body. So I have very limited mobility in my arms and legs. It's not progressive. I've been in a wheelchair since I was 4. And even though I'm limited in my mobility, I am fiercely independent, and I love being able to do things on my own and figuring out ways to function and do things for myself. I also have scoliosis of the spine. It's quite a severe curve. I have an 85-degree curve. And I first found out that I had scoliosis when I was 7 years old. Besides that, I am an outdoors lover. I love stepping outside my comfort zone and trying new things, going on adventures. I have an addiction to books and chips and tea and anything purple. So there's a little bit about me. So I think today's video is going to be really short, and I don't really want to get into the halo traction just quite yet. So what I wanted to start out with was just my journey in getting to this point. I think that what a lot of people don't understand is just how difficult the decision to go through a major medical procedure is. I mean, it's not just a, oh, I'm going to do this today kind of thing. It has stages of coping and just trying to work through it. And I mean, it can take a long time to come to a place where you're okay with making the ultimate decision of what you're going to do. So I want to start out by talking about my journey and how I got to this point of being in this hospital with screws in my head. So like I said earlier, I was diagnosed with scoliosis when I was pretty young. I think I was like maybe 7 when I first had my diagnosis. And around 12 years old, my orthopedic surgeon decided that he was going to refer me to a spinal specialist. But it took, as it usually does with seeing a high-up specialist, it took about a year and a half to actually get in to see him. When I was 14 and I went for this appointment, I really wasn't prepared for how life-changing that appointment was going to be. I mean, I knew that I had a curvature. I knew that it affected my life somewhat. It wasn't really that bad. I kind of just figured that he was going to tell me that everything was fine and that I could just continue on living and everything was going to be sunshine and roses and happiness. But I mean, reality doesn't quite work like that. And from that appointment, everything changed. The spinal surgeon came in and he basically said, you have a rapidly progressing curvature, and the only way to fix it is to do a surgery. And at that time, there was not, halo traction was not an option. It was only just reintroduced as a treatment. So at that time, the surgery was pretty intense. They were talking about a 16-hour surgery where they'd have to open me up from the front and the back, and they'd have to remove vertebrae, and it would just be really gruesome. And they told me that as a result, I would lose about 90% of my mobility because the rods would kind of take away my ability to rock back and forth, which is something that I rely on for a lot of my function on a daily basis. That day was it was a game changer for me as far as life experience goes, because I'd had surgeries before, but it was when I was super young, and at that point I hadn't really been through any like major medical changes in my life. And as I said, I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't expecting it. I kind of figured that because I was young, I would be able to keep on being young, and that bad things weren't going to touch me because I'm young and innocent. But I mean, that mindset in itself creates a problem, because we think that when we're young, it somehow protects us from bad things happening. And we're never really prepared when they do happen when we're young, because we think, oh, well, I've still got years and years ahead of me, and I've got my whole life, so nothing bad can happen to me. And I mean, that was my mindset for such a long time, a long period of my life. And that appointment was really a slap in the face, because they basically told me that if I didn't get the procedure that would remove 90% of my mobility, that I wouldn't make it to my 20s, just because the curve was progressing so rapidly that they were expecting damages to my organs, and that my lungs would eventually just stop working, and that I would just eventually not be able to function. So here I was faced with this decision at 14 years old to either do something that would remove 90% of my functionality and, alter my life in a huge way, or take an unknown amount of time the way that I was, but possibly have a slow and painful death. And at that moment, even though I didn't realize it at the time, but at that moment, I went through, now I know that there are stages for grief, but I like to say that there are stages for coping too when it comes to these kind of medical decisions. And at least what I went through were 4 stages, and I can look back at them now and actually identify them, being kind of separate from the situation now. And the first stage is shock. I mean, I was absolutely mortified that this was happening, that I was having to make this decision, and I spent pretty much a whole day just kind of zoning out and kind of not altogether there, because I couldn't wrap my mind around the fact that this was happening. This was actually my reality. And it is shock. Your body just goes through this kind of, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And you tend to panic, or just have, a million emotions going through your mind, but you just can't deal with it. So you end up just being shocked and just kind of freezing. So I mean, none of these stages happen quickly, but after shock, I went through this period of being so angry. I questioned why on earth, on top of everything else that I go through on a daily basis, why did I have to go through this too? Why was this happening to me? And just getting really mad, at reality and life, and just that things go wrong, and you wonder what it is that you've done to deserve whatever bad situation it is that you're trying to face, and you just get really mad. um, and that's it happens. It's not something that you can necessarily avoid. It's You have to be frustrated. You have to let that emotion come through. And I just remember being so mad for such a long period where I would just kind of stew over it. Anytime that I had time to myself or was left to my own devices, it was always like, grr, why am I going through this? And then after the frustration comes sadness. I remember going through a time where I just felt heartbroken, because at that point life was looking pretty bleak for me. I would either have to lose my mobility or lose my life, and it wasn't a straight decision. It wasn't a no-brainer. It was something that I had to put a lot of thought and time into, and it made me sad. It made me sad that I was reacting the way that I was reacting. It made me sad that my family was having to go through what we were all going through. The situation itself was just sad, and I just ended up feeling hopeless. I remember spending so many nights where I would cry myself to sleep, just wondering how I was going to make a decision to alter my life in such an extreme way. And then after the sadness came the last stage of coping with these kind of medical decisions, and that was acceptance, where I just basically had to tell myself that it is what it is. I can't avoid this situation. I had to make a decision, and for better or for worse, time was going to keep going forward, and I had to move on with my life. So that's when I really had to, buckle down and kind of weigh out all of the pros and cons, and make a decision. And then I had to stick with it and be happy with the decision that I made. I'm talking about these stages like they're, a breeze to get through, but in reality, it was a solid year that I went through all of these different emotions and just all of these different things happening to me that I was just not used to. I was not used to feeling the way that I felt. And for a lot of it, I just felt kind of lost and confused and just not sure where to go or what to do in that situation. So I ultimately came to make my choice, and it was so not easy. And I don't even think that there is a straight cut way of dealing with these kind of medical decisions, no matter what they are. I don't think that there is a how to cope with this. You can't write a book about it. But all I can say is that it's important to recognize how you feel and to be okay with it, because you feel the way you feel. It's natural. You have to accept that those are the emotions that you're going through, and it's okay. I mean, it's difficult to go through them, obviously, but you have the right to experience life the way that you want to. And if you are going through those emotions, being sad, being frustrated, just not sure what to do, those are all valid. It's your own experience, and no one should tell you that you shouldn't be feeling those things. And no one should be telling you that you need to be doing something different in order to cope with those things. I mean, that's not what I'm trying to do here today. I'm trying to share my experience to let people know that you're not alone. But it's just so important to recognize that you feel the way you feel, and that's okay. The other important thing to acknowledge when you're making these kind of medical decisions is that ultimately you know in your heart what you're supposed to do. You do. You just deep down inside, only you can say what is best for you, and only you can decide where you want to take your life and what direction you want it to be. So don't second guess your decision. Don't tailor it to other people. You have to do what's best for you, and you have to make the decision that is going to get you through the rest of your life, because it's you who has to live it. So whatever decision you end up coming to, you have to, in your heart, know that that's the right thing for you, and that's what you need to keep going and to keep living your life. Ultimately, I decided that I was going to reject the surgery when I was 14. I came to that decision because at that point in my life, I felt that giving up my mobility was too much of a price. And I thought that I would rather have, X amount of years being able to do the things that I love, instead of having the rest of my life not being able to do anything that I love. To me, my mobility and the activities that I was able to do were more important to me. So when I was 14 and I had faced that decision, I ended up saying no. And a lot of people ask me now, looking at it 7 or 8 years later, if I regret that decision. And I have to say no, because I've been able to do so many amazing things and able to experience so much of life. And I mean, I can't say that if I had taken that surgery that I wouldn't have done what I did. I think that maybe the experience would have been different. But altogether, I'm just thankful that I had the experiences that I did, and I met the people that I met, and I felt things that I felt. And I wouldn't turn back now. Knowing what I'm going through now, I still wouldn't turn back, because everything that I experienced between then and now has made me who I am. So I went through a good solid 6 years without having a whole lot of problems. I mean, as the curve progressed, I had to adjust myself. I had to adapt and, learn to do things that I could do before, but I can't do now. Things like that. But it was an adjustment. It was adapting, and I was able to do it. And for 6 years of my life, I was able to do some pretty amazing things, and able to experience a lot that I may not have been able to experience. But it was when I was about 20 that I started to notice a lot more issues surfacing due to the scoliosis curvature, and just that the changes I was experiencing were becoming, they were kind of inhibiting me from doing what I wanted to do, and I just had increased amounts of pain and just a lot of other physical issues when I was about 20 years old, and so I knew at that point that it was time to revisit the surgical procedure. So at that time, I didn't really like the surgeon that I was with when I was 14 years old. And this is something that a lot of people maybe don't understand, is that if you have a doctor, you were referred to a doctor, and you're not happy with their treatment or the way that they're helping you or not helping you, a lot of people think that you just have to stick with it because that's who you were given. That's not necessarily the truth. So in my case, I was able to get a referral for another spinal specialist in a different place. I live in a small community, so anytime that I need medical treatment, I have to go to a bigger center anyway. And my new spinal specialist just happened to be in a place that was actually closer to my home than my previous spinal specialist. So again, the process to be referred to the spinal specialist took quite a while. I didn't actually get to see him until I was 21. And when I went in to see him, we talked. I was kind of just expecting the surgery like it was presented to me before. But what I got from him was actually surprising. He said to me, we just started doing halo traction again. It was used in the medical community for 40 years, and then it just kind of was stopped being used for a while, and now it's being reintroduced. And he said, we're having really positive results with the traction. So he said he wanted to try that, and he said that the traction could make, if it worked, it could make the surgery less intense, and that I might not have to be opened up front to back, and I might not have to have so many surgeries or as long of a surgery, and I might recover more quickly. There were a whole lot of positives to trying the halo traction. So even with the fact that I was going through a lot more physical challenges, a lot more pain, a lot more serious issues, it was still not easy to make the decision to be here at this point in my life. It took a solid year for me to make this decision to accept this treatment. And I really, again, just had to weigh everything out and think about what I wanted for myself, and what I wanted for my life. And at that point, when I was 21, I knew that I wanted to fight to stay alive. I wanted to keep living, because I had so much in my life at that point that was worth living for. So I mean, I went through the stages of being, shocked and frustrated and sad, and then accepting. And I went through those stages even up until the day I got here. I mean, the day I got here, I was still terrified and frustrated and confused and all of those things. But at that point, I just knew that I had to try, and I wouldn't be happy with myself until I at least tried to do something to prolong my life. So that brings us to today. I'm here, I'm doing the halo traction treatment, and I'm hoping to be able to share my experiences and maybe help someone like myself who is trying to figure out how to... Oh, you gotta love the PA. How to make that decision to come and do a major medical procedure, whether it's halo traction or not. So I'm hopefully going to be able to do some more videos and talk about my experiences more, And again, I hope that this helps someone out there to make the call like I did, and hopefully just provide some more information than what's online, because there isn't a whole lot out there. And I would love to be able to support people in their journeys, whatever it may be. So if you're watching this and you enjoyed it and you want to see more, then give me a comment in the description. You can also check out some more videos on my channel. I haven't been able to update a whole lot on this channel in the last couple of years, but there's some stuff from when I was really young and very naive, and they're pretty embarrassing, but I'm going to recommend them anyway. So you can go and check out those videos, and hopefully I'll be making another video soon. Thanks everyone. Bye-bye.